This is the Bevo Buckets podcast on the Burnt Orange Sports Network. I'm Will Iger here with Ryan Hopper and Seth Berger. And every Tuesday, we've been here on the Burnt Orange Sports Network to talk Texas hoops. We've also discussed some of the biggest storylines in college basketball, but mainly focusing on Texas men's basketball and the SEC. Guys, it was an interesting week. Last week of regular season for Texas men's basketball as they head into postseason play and the SEC tournament. How are we doing, fellas? Everything good on your ends?
Yeah, living the dream.
Yeah, I can't complain. Not bad, but we're about to get to it in a second. Being at that game and just the Oklahoma game and watching that happen, that was tough. That was tough.
Yeah, for the first time in our 4 years as students at the University of Texas, Texas dropped to Oklahoma on Saturday night, senior night, 76 to 72. Um, Neck and neck throughout this whole game here, but Trey Johnson could just not get it going. Something we haven't seen from the freshman all year. He was over 14 from the field, over 4 from three. He did get to the free throw line and was 7 for 7 from the stripe. It just seemed like something was in his head the whole night. He missed an open layup or two, missed shots he usually makes. And then down the stretch, it feels like some of his shots were a little bit forced, but some may disagree with that one, and some of them were not forced. That being said, I thought Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark both played good games despite their foul trouble. Pope, he had 21 points, his best game in a while. Texas wants to make a run in the SEC tournament. He's going to need to play well. Kendall Weaver returned from action as well, the senior. Or it was great to see Weaver back for Texas. Maybe that was one of the reasons why why Jeremiah Fears shot 2 for 14 from the field. Credit that maybe a little bit to Weaver and his defensive efforts. Seth, Ryan, you guys were both at the game on Saturday night. What were your overall thoughts on the loss for Texas?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a tough one, like you said. First loss to Oklahoma in our 4 years. Senior night, the most bubblicious game you could possibly draw up. You got two teams basically right on the brink of the bubble. A game you have to have if you're either team. A good basketball game throughout, competitive, back and forth. But to me, this game was kind of a microcosm of Texas's season. It was very back and forth. Same with Texas. It was, you got Kendall Weaver returning to injury, and then you find yourself with your best player, Trey Johnson, who's been nothing short of spectacular this year, who getting unable to hit. He couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. I mean, he went 0 of 14. He missed a dunk. He missed a layup, two layups actually. He grabbed 7 at the free throw line, which is great, but really unfortunate, especially like you said, when you held Jeremiah Fears, another lottery pick, to 2 of 14. The statistics, the percentages, they're pretty even for both teams. Difference was Oklahoma made 4 more free throws, but they made the same number of field goals, same number of 3-pointers. Percentages were very close and a good basketball game, but just a game you had to have. And not only for your tournament hopes, Rodney Terry fighting for his job, really unfortunate ending to a season and tough way to go out for Trey Johnson at the Moody Center in his last game to see him go 0-14 from the field.
Yeah, I would second pretty much everything he said. It was a good basketball game. I will say, in the respect that there was positives, but it just wasn't quite good enough. It is a microcosm of the Longhorns season, but in the way that it's not, just the fact that there was no slow start and there was no complete utter collapse. You can say there was a small run of 3 or 4 possessions at the end where they kind of did collapse due to not making a shot or to bad shot selection. Um, but really, I've said this. I said this on our show last week. I've said this on College Crossfire this past week. However Tremont Mark goes, this team can go. And it's not just Tremont, it's other ancillary pieces such as Jordan Pope, who had a very good game, one of the best games he's had in a Texas uniform. The backcourt did enough distribution wise and scoring wise. And you got some second half scoring from Kaluma. It's just when the lights got bright, um, Jeremiah fears, he won't get as much heat because he had a few more points than Trey Johnson, didn't shoot as badly, but you can't have your best player, even if he is a freshman, go 0 for 15 in a gotta have it home game on senior night. And so really, in a way, it wasn't a microcosm of Texas's season because he wasn't the one putting out all the fires. He was actually the one kind of starting them in this game.
Not trying to make excuses for this Texas men's basketball team on Saturday night, but you have to look at some of these plays and yes, Oklahoma played great. They deserved to win, but some were the kind of a little bit lucky. I mean, you look at a three that Oklahoma hit to put them up 73 to 67. Jordan Pope was right there, down four. The possession prior, Arthur Kaluma, he missed a big free throw to make it a 3-point game instead of a 2-point game. Kane Shedrick, he missed a lot of two big free throws in the last 10 minutes of the game. I mean, you can go on and on about these little mistakes. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the fact that, I mean, I did earlier, but not just a little spiel, that Trey Johnson didn't make a shot all game. I mean, what is any of this, if you're Texas, do you kind of look in the mirror and say, well, if we did this and this is a different game, and we were only 2 plays away from winning despite our best player not having a great night. Is there anything you think that Tech should consider there, or is it back to the drawing board before Wednesday's game against Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament?
Well, I think the thing is you can consider that if you're getting, I believe, between Mark, Kaluma, and Pope, that trio was over 40 points as a trio between them. If you get that kind of scoring production from who should theoretically be your second, third, and fourth options, you got a chance. They were all in double figures. They all did so reasonably efficiently. Kaluma had somewhat of a rough first half, but it was also one of those times where he isn't really getting the shots to put up. Your silver lining can be if Trey Johnson can add to that, we can play with anybody. I thought, they've had a lot of defensive breakdowns this year. I'd say there was some of that, but a lot less of that on Saturday night. But what stood out to me, you brought up Shedrick. Shedrick was the only starter not cheered by the student section, and then it gets to Terry, and Terry just gets outright booed by the student section. And I feel like the story of this team this year is going to be they had talent in a lot of places, but they couldn't get the big man right and they couldn't get the coach right. I mean, Porter Moser looked like his job was on the line. The way he was clapping on the sideline, chewing guys out, a foul went against him. He did the old like the coach stomp. It looked like his job was on the line and not Coach Terry's. And I feel like that says something.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, important game for both teams. We look at Oklahoma the last couple of years. They've been in Porter's prior 3 years, and his 3 years in Norman, the one year was pretty rough, and the other 2 years they've been outside looking in, first, second team out of the tournament. And like you said, Porter was very demonstrative, was stomping, clapping. I mean, I saw Devin Forsyth, or excuse me, Dayton Forsyth check out of the game. I don't think I've ever seen a coach so happy to check out the eighth man and give him props for his defense that he played for 2 minutes. I mean, he slapped him on the butt, said, "Attaboy." Like he was into it all game, clapping. And not that your coach has to be, going crazy on the sideline. You don't have to be Dan Hurley or Eric Musselman jumping up on the scorer's table or taking your shirt off. But, you're right. There was definitely, could add to your team. Some teams kind of feed off their head coach, and Rodney has at times gotten a little animated, but for the most part, I'd say a little bit more reserved compared to other coaches across the conference in the country. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to it. When you look ahead to the SEC tournament, if you can get that production from 2, 3, 4, and I'd be willing to bet Trey's not going 0-14 again. You do it, but that's been the problem all year. Can you get 2, 3, 4? Can you even get one of those four, one of those three outside of Trey to get going in a game? And you're right, the front court it was a problem, especially in a physical dominant like a big league like the SEC, where you're gonna have athletes strong down low. Never quite had it. Shedrick obviously has had a lot of back issues. He fought through it, so props to him. But he's put in a tough position, and quite frankly, the depth behind him is not SEC caliber. So a tough position for him to be in, and an unfortunate ending probably for the Horns, unless they do. You probably wouldn't have to win two, maybe three to make the NCAA tournament, and that's a really tough road ahead because you got Vanderbilt with the potential of playing A&M and Tennessee, and those are all tournament teams there. Even Vanderbilt's probably 8, 9, 10 seed there, and it's going to be tough.
Another credit to Porter Moser and his staff is Oklahoma didn't really make mistakes throughout this game. Stayed even keeled, only turned the ball over 5 times. They capitalized off Texas's turnovers, scoring 21 points off 11 Texas turnovers. And they played the same way the whole game, despite not getting the same production from their stars. Um, Long possessions, continuous pick and rolls with Fears as the distributor running point. Got good looks down the stretch, and they got to the free throw line, and which is arguably one of the differences in this game. Texas had 23 fouls. Oklahoma had 28 free throw attempts in this one. And at the end of the day, if you're Texas down the stretch, you maybe can take a little from what Oklahoma did and take that to how you guys can improve moving forward. What went well in this game for Texas, right? Was it playing in transition? Was it getting good looks from Pope? Was it Shedrick in the post? What was it specifically that worked for Texas? Something that they need to stick to. And I think another way we saw this issue, another game, sorry, changing course here, was against Mississippi State. Mississippi State last Tuesday was arguably Texas's best win on its resume. Overtime win on the road, 87 to 82. Dominated the game in the second half right up until the end. And then the pressure comes, and Texas can't handle Mississippi State's full court press. They let Josh Hubbard, who'd been playing bad all game, get hot in the last 10 minutes of the game. And all of a sudden, Texas can't make its free throws. Um, that being said, it was a very impressive win on the road, but the same issues we saw in Oklahoma happened against Mississippi State. They just didn't have the lead in the Oklahoma game like they did in the Mississippi State game. Um, Sorry to be negative, but what kind of are your guys' thoughts on Texas win over Mississippi State, and what did they do well specifically that you'd like to see from them in the tournament, starting with Vanderbilt on Wednesday?
Well, I thought that I mean, to be honest, this team is gonna have to hit shots. I know that sounds extremely basic, extremely, 40,000 foot view, but the difference in the Mississippi State game, while I thought again there was a good defensive effort, there were still defensive lapses. The difference in the Mississippi State game was the Bulldogs were, as I recall, 24% from three. Texas was 48% from three, on like not that many fewer attempts, basically made twice the threes that Mississippi State did and did so at twice the clip. This game, despite it being on the road, if those are the facts, should not have been close. They looked like at times like my old freshman team I was coaching against that press. I mean, they would put it in the corner and then just be surprised the double team comes. Like, guys, this is fundamental basketball. This is, of course, they're going to trap you in the corner because you're giving them two other, basically defenders in the form of the baseline and the sideline. That inbounds from Jordan Pope was just ridiculous. He and I believe it was, I know someone else was inbounding to Pope. I believe they weren't on the same page. Mississippi State makes that layup. I was like, here we go again. They've lost this game, but credit to them. They hit shots in overtime. They played pretty good defense in overtime. It just they escape Starkville with a win and they get some much needed luck, but then you almost squandered that win in a way against Oklahoma. But I guess if they hadn't have gotten that win in Starkville, they would need three tournament wins. And in my view, with this weak bubble, I think you can get away with if they can even capable of doing this, beating Vanderbilt, who they lost to in Nashville earlier this season. Seth was there, and then they're gonna have to pull off another victory against A&M in the second round, should they get that far.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of good points there. The game is frustrating to watch, like you said. It's like coaching your freshman basketball team. It's basketball 101 that they're going to try and trap you in a corner. And when you break a press, it's vital to have somebody in the middle of the court, which for some reason they didn't do for the first 8 times they tried to break the press. They had nobody. The closest they had to half court was maybe Shedrick standing at the opposing free throw line, which was maddening to watch. It's insane. It's like the easiest way to break a press, get the ball back to the middle because you have room to work with. It's like you're the sideline, you get trapped in the coffin corner, no good. And like you said, the inbound, first off, you have a timeout. There's no reason to force a bad inbound pass. Call a timeout. If you don't, if it's not, if you're gonna, you'd rather call the timeout and burn the last timeout than turn the ball over right under your own hoop. So really frustrating. That comes down to coaching too. That's basketball 101. And honestly, coaching as well, but the players, they're high level basketball players. They should know these things. These are things that you learn when you're 10 years old, 12 years old, when they first let you start pressing teams. So pretty embarrassing and frustrating to watch. But the positives, they hit shots. They hit shots in a big way, shooting 47.8% from three, went 11 to 23. That's huge. You got a great game from Tremont Mark, 24, 29 minutes of play, 9 to 13 from the field, 4, 6 from three. Great to see when he's healthy. I mean, like you said, he's kind of the X factor. We know Trey, short of last game, is going to do what he's going to do. But when Tremont gets going, and you can even get a third from Pope or Kaluma. I know that Kaluma has been a little banged up recently, even though he's played through it. Then you have options, right? You have a third guy to go to. That's when you become dangerous. And heading into Nashville this week, they're going to need three, maybe four when if they win against Vanderbilt to play A&M. And the good news is we mentioned this weak front court. If I'm Texas, I'm chomping at the bit for another chance at Vandy because their front court's not weak, but you just got outplayed, out hustled in their gym, and you should be angry. And obviously, you're playing for your tournament life, so whether you care about Vanderbilt or not, there's no reason you shouldn't get up for this.
Yeah, by the way, Mark came off the bench that game in his six highest scoring games of the year. Texas is 6-0, and it's not like they beat cupcake teams when he plays well. They beat Kentucky, they beat Mississippi State, and they beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma and Mississippi State games were on the road. Um, so I don't know what that says, but to me, it says that when Tremont Mark plays well, Texas wins. And I think we've seen that all year. And against A&M, he hit the biggest shot of the season, and Texas won. And so therefore, three of Texas's biggest wins of the year, A&M, Kentucky, Mississippi State, were all games where Tremont Mark played well or made a game-changing play in the victory. So I think you guys are right. Yes, Hop. Texas does need to make shots, but I think their role players need to make shots. And that's what happened against Oklahoma is down the stretch when Trey is not involved, which is okay. Trey hasn't been playing well. Give the ball to Trayvon Mark, give it to Arthur Kluman, give it to Jordan Pope. But then in crunch time, those guys need to hit shots. And specifically for Mark and Pope, and even Kluma to some extent, they take really tough shots. They don't make it easy on themselves. It's a lot of deep twos. You see some contested three. Yes, some are on catch and shoot, like Mark's corner three against Oklahoma. But if they can make their lives a little bit easier on the offensive end, Texas could definitely beat Vanderbilt on Wednesday no matter what. But I think they'd have a lot better chance against A&M on Thursday, not to get too ahead of ourselves here. Um, Anything else around this Mississippi State game or Oklahoma game this past weekend that you guys noted? Anything else to point out, to look for? You guys got
I,
anything else, or should we
it
talk,
felt like in
Andy?
the court that it felt like for a while, oh, is Julian Larry going to take Jordan Pope's job? He started a few games. The pitch was, oh, he's a bit longer, better on defense. I think that is fully out the window now that Pope might be coming into his own. He was the only reason that game against Oklahoma was even close. Honestly, that one finish was just absolutely nasty. The like reverse he did. But Julian Larry, not a great week. Big foul down the stretch against Oklahoma and then against Mississippi State to make the calamitous inbound possible. Julian, what are you doing? Trying to reach in and get that steal. As you recall, Texas was up four, about 15, 16 seconds remaining. He's reaching in, trying to get a steal, and that put him on the line. And of course, they made their free throws and made the 1-and-1, or maybe it was a double bonus. Two were made regardless, but you just put your hand straight up, just stay in front of your man. I got just another one where it's like, so what is on the players and what is on what the staff is telling them?
Yeah. Head scratching mistake. I mean, that's just situational awareness, knowing that I can't be giving them an opportunity to score points with no time coming off the clock. Move your feet, get back on defense. If he gets by you, he gets by you, but there's no point in grabbing him when there was a line of defense behind you. So aggravating. I mean, that end was very aggravating. If you're whether you were a Texas fan or just a basketball aficionado, it would have made you pull your hair out. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And they were fortunate to come away with it in overtime. They were the aggressor in overtime, which was great to see. Almost a tale of two halves there when you break up those last five few minutes in overtime. But if you look at this week, it's tough to digest because you go on the road and you come away with a top 25 road win with momentum coming home on senior night. Everybody understands the importance and the urgency in winning the Oklahoma game. And, they've asked a lot from Trey this year, and you don't want to burden him with the loss, but obviously extremely unfortunate when he doesn't hit a single shot. And you lose a close one and a heartbreaker to, dig a deeper hole off the bubble and to your rival, that'll probably propel them into the tournament, being a quad one road win for them. So now your work's cut out for you. You're going to Nashville to play Vanderbilt, and yes, I know that Vanderbilt's in Nashville, but I wouldn't be too worried about the four Vanderbilt fans showing up. If they're going to beat you, it's because they're a better coach team. They're a better team. But, like I said, you have more talent than Vanderbilt. You should still be aggravated about that loss in Nashville a month ago. And you're playing for your tournament hope, for tournament lives. And Rodney's playing for his job, essentially. They got to keep winning for him to most likely keep his job. So, if they're not ready to go, I don't know what to say. That falls on the staff, that falls on the players, but there's absolutely no reason they can't win at least game one.
Yeah, by the way, Larry, rare to see a guard pick up 5 fouls in general, no matter who they're guarding. Even rare to guard someone who's 5'10", and still pick up 5 fouls. No disrespect to Josh Hubbard. He's an unbelievable player, but he doesn't really operate in the paint. He operates more in the perimeter. That's what I'm pointing to. On Tuesday night against Mississippi State. Um, Moving forward to the SC tournament, we saw Mark have a lot of success coming off the bench in this Mississippi State game. It's clear that scoring is not an issue for the starters, even when Mark comes off the bench, because of Johnson and Pope and even Kaluma being able to stretch the floor a little bit. So starting Devin Pryor instead of Mark, do you guys think Texas should do that against Vanderbilt? And if they win against A&M, considering A&M has Wade Phillips, Zurich Taylor, an abundance of guards who can score the basketball, do you think Mark coming off the bench should be a better option for this Texas team than starting Pryor?
Well, I remember Devon Pryor had arguably I believe, his coming out party in that game in Nashville. I remember I think he got out on a transition dunk off of a steal, showcased some of his athleticism. I think both Pryor, because remember, Pryor mainly got into the rotation, not because they were listening to me on the Bevo's Buckets podcast, but because Kendall Weaver got hurt. They needed a, good perimeter defender who can help you athletically, can help you as a rebounder. So now it's a question of how close to 100% is Kendall Weaver, and then do you decide to start Weaver? Do you decide to start Pryor in that Weaver-esque role? Or do you go with Mark? I think, you lean towards either one of the defensive guards because both of these teams, I mean, don't look ahead to A&M. You got to be Vanderbilt first, but both of these teams are pretty good rebounding, but not exactly great shooting teams. So you can probably have one of these guys on the floor. I kind of view Vanderbilt as A&M, but smaller and not as good. I mean, we came into the Vanderbilt game a month ago and said this could be Texas's time because Vanderbilt doesn't have anybody above 6'9" in the rotation. And that remains true, but they are going to have to work, work, work on the glass. And, if that means even throwing them a curveball and running some small ball with, Big Z or Kaluma at the five, do whatever you have to do. Um, they've got to figure this one out.
Yeah. And like you said, we said this is a game that, back in February that Texas could win because, yeah, you undoubtedly have more talent than Vanderbilt, right? It's a game where Texas's weaknesses aren't necessarily Vanderbilt's strength. You mentioned the post play, but what we saw was Vanderbilt out hustling them, Texas doing a poor job of defensive rotations, and Jalen Carey, who's 6'8" but 265, kind of a load down low, absolutely pounding Caden Shedrick, just feasting. For the first half of the first half, Vanderbilt wasn't really hitting their first shot, but they were getting offensive rebounds and scoring on that second or third chance, which is something you absolutely have to prevent if you're Texas. And like you said, an issue that's plagued this team all year is slow starts. Now, it didn't happen in Oklahoma, but they still lost. So you get out there, you get going, you crash the boards, you set the tone early. Traymon Mark keeps playing the way he's been playing, and I'm certain Trey's going to turn it around. You might have something there, and that's kind of the hope. That's why I think if you're a Texas fan, in the back of the minds of the players, you got to hold on to that and understand. And just when you go out there and shoot well, Texas can compete with just about anybody because they have the talent and they have the athleticism to do so.
Yeah, Seth, I completely agree. There have been probably few games this year, even in conference. I can only point to a couple, including at Florida, maybe home against Auburn and Alabama, where I thought Texas did not have a chance to win the game. Um, Maybe I'm delusional. I don't think that's the case. I think this Texas roster stacks up with the other best rosters in the SEC. I mean, it's clear that they're more talented than Vanderbilt. They played a Mississippi State team this week that has a better record than them in conference, that has been better than them all year. And I think Texas has a better roster than them. I would say the same about Missouri. Shout out Missouri and the work they've done. Mark Mitchell's had a great year. I'm taking that Texas roster any day of the week over what Missouri puts on the floor on a nightly basis. There is no reason Texas should be the third worst team record wise. I guess they're tied with Oklahoma and won the tiebreaker, but no reason for them to be 6-12 in conference play. And it's not like their schedule was that difficult. I mean, they played Auburn at home, they played Alabama at home, they played Tennessee at home, they obviously played A&M at both, played Kentucky at home. There should be no room for error moving forward in this tournament, and there isn't. It's win or go home, and even if they beat Vanderbilt on Wednesday, I think the A&M game is also win or go home if you're Texas because you lost to Georgia, a team that was on the bubble, and going into the game, Texas was projected to make the tournament, and Georgia wasn't. You lost to Oklahoma at home the next Saturday in a very similar situation. And There's just no room for this Texas team to lose to Vanderbilt on Wednesday. Even after the fact that they lost to them already once in the year, it's extremely hard to beat a team two times in the regulars or two times in a season. And if Vanderbilt can do it against Texas, then maybe Texas season deserves to end. And the players just need a rest and it's time to go home and reset for next year. But that's just the way I kind of look at things. Um, we'll see moving forward, especially on Wednesday, what happens with this Texas team. I think they're going to be prepared. I think they'll be ready. A little bit concerned if they win about the team's injury history. Kane Shedrick back problems, Kaluma, Weaver, Mark. They've had their fair share of injury problems, even Jordan Pope this year. So a little bit worried about this SEC schedule. I know how that's how all postseason tournament schedules work, but I wouldn't say it plays in favor for this Longhorns team this year. So I'm optimistic about Texas' chances against Vanderbilt, but it's definitely not a cakewalk. And I do think Texas, they may not be favoring this game. I think they should be the favorite to beat Vanderbilt on Wednesday at 2:30. What are your guys' thoughts? Are there any score predictions moving forward for this one on Wednesday?
You go first, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned I want to hit on a key point that you talked about, Will, first, but you talked about the urgency, the importance of those two home games, Oklahoma, Georgia, and just dropping an egg, especially in that Georgia game. Um, but it's yeah, and we talk about the weak bubble, but the unfortunate thing for Texas is when you look at a lot of the teams on the bubble that are just in front of Texas, they all own positive head-to-head records against Texas.
Mm.
Oklahoma is 1-1 against Texas, but Oklahoma has a couple marquee wins. Non-con they beat Michigan in the non-conference neutral. That win against obviously the tournament committee does look at recency, and Texas has kind of struggled down the stretch, and Oklahoma picked up a couple key wins the last 2 weeks. You look at Indiana's probably punched their ticket. They haven't played Texas, obviously. Ohio State, you played them game one and lost. That's tough. So when you look at the bracket, most teams in front of you and near that bubble, because it's so weak, have probably punched their ticket or would take. And there's not a ton of bid stealing opportunities left because Drake won the Missouri Valley. That's a big bid stealing opportunity. And it's kind of Atlantic 10, ACC, maybe you could have a bid stealer, but outside, and I don't see it happening from the Big 10, SEC, or Big East or Big 12. You never know. But a team, maybe the only team that I could see on this, when you look through the bubble that could maybe give Texas a chance is Xavier. But I think that still would take two wins from Texas to surpass Xavier, and Xavier can't go on a 2-3 game heater in the Big East tournament. And they're playing Marquette game one, so that's good for Texas because Marquette should win that game. But so maybe our old friend Shaka can help us out. But Texas got to win two games, and the thing is, like we said, Vandy, you can beat them. You didn't, but it was a back and forth game. You have the talent to beat them, no question. And A&M, if you win, it's a team you've already beaten. Now, I know it took an absolute miracle comeback, but you should have the confidence to know you could beat them. And like we said, they can't shoot very well. So if you go on one of these heaters that you had, like you did at Mississippi State or you did in the second half against A&M, there's no reason why you can't win that ball game. I agree with what Will said. It'll be interesting to see this team on a quick turnaround. I don't know if this team's built for that, but you got to hope that the urgency and the finality of the end is a good enough motivator to get them going. But I'm gonna go prediction for this game. It seems like when I get optimistic about Texas, they seem to lose. And when I'm pessimistic, they do fare a little better. Maybe don't win, but at least keep it closer. I predicted a blowout in Starkville and Fayetteville, and those were both, it was an overtime loss and a win. So I'm going to go, I think Vanderbilt wins in a frustrating end to the Rodney Terry era in the season, 79-76 Commodores.
I could definitely see that happening. And I feel like we've been saying this every episode the last month. If they don't get up for this, what will they get up for? They'll get up for this. This is a big rebound spot. And to their credit, occasionally they have. I'm thinking getting themselves up off the mat in Starkville, and Mississippi State couldn't hit anything, but Texas did. Credit to them. They did what they needed to do to win. Um, I was just looking back on my notes from the Vanderbilt game, and Caden Shedrick, much maligned from myself and this fan base, but people might forget he used the size advantage in Nashville to his advantage. He got bullied early. He grew into the game. He finished with 16 and 10. I think he's gonna know to not let that happen again. What was the big fella? Carey was his last name, Julian Carey. The who just he was 265. He just dominated them inside. I've never seen, well, I probably have, but I don't remember a first half with as many and ones as that Vandy game had. It was just absurd. That will regress to the mean. Um, I'm going to take Texas in a have to have it spot, uh, 76-72. They move on. They save the season that is on life support. Last note on the Commodores. Yes, this game is in Nashville, like you said, Seth, but I also agree. How many Vanderbilt fans are really showing up at 2:30 in the afternoon, or maybe 3:30 if Nashville's on Eastern time, on a Wednesday when, according to Joe Lenardi, they have about a 74% chance to get into the tournament regardless. And with this week bubble, I think they could afford a loss to Texas and be okay. This is not their home gym either. That's important to note. And their home gym has that janky spacing going on behind the rims. You don't know what that does for shooters' depth perception. Like many shooters have complained about the Final Four being in football stadiums and it messes up their depth perception. Um, and outside of that, two of the Commodores' eight conference wins have come outside of their gym, and one was against LSU, and we all saw what the Longhorns did in Baton Rouge. It's not a good program right now. So, no home cooking for Vanderbilt. I think the size disadvantage hurts them. When you're the smaller team, you have to be desperate. Texas, theoretically, is the desperate team. I think they get it done.
Yeah. And like you said, I don't know when Vanderbilt spring break is, but if they're in session, I can't see a lot of those academically inclined kids ditching class in the middle of a Wednesday to go watch the Wednesday of the SEC tournament. So, maybe if your schedule were to give you that flexibility, maybe you take the 10-15 minute ride over to Bridgestone Arena from campus. But again, like you said, and even if they were to, it's Vanderbilt. It's a small private school that is not it's not an athletic power. They're known for the rigorous academics. This is not a fan base where we've seen some games this year where teams have traveled to the Moody Center and been loud and boisterous, and Vanderbilt in their own backyard is not going to be even that. So the crowd should not be a factor. Although I will say in the SEC tournament, you get fans from every school. Texas, obviously not a school that other fan bases are very fond of. You could see every other fan base rooting for Vanderbilt to beat Texas. That is the only thing in a neutral tournament setting like this.
Yeah, unfortunately for Texas, Vanderbilt spring break is this week, so their students will be in session next week. I do not see them making the trip at 2:30 to or 3:30 there to Bridgestone Arena in downtown Nashville. Sorry, Hop.
If it's this week, they're good. They're out.
Oh yeah,
So
it is this week. You're right. My bad. Vanderbilt spring break, sorry, is this week. They're
yeah.
out. So I guess that's good for Texas. Another thing we're talking about fans at the games. The SEC tournament being in Nashville and considering how good the conference is this year, a lot of professional and NBA scouts, general managers, player development personnel, whoever you name it, they will be in the arena for Trey Johnson on Wednesday. So, yes, Trey Johnson did not play well this past Saturday. That being said, this week could be his last opportunity to show NBA scouts and executives what he's made of in a game action. Doubt he's going to play 5-on-5 at the combine. This might be his last time outside of a agency pro day to be in front of scouts and GMs like he's kind of done in pre-draft. So Trey Johnson has a lot to prove, even though he is still probably gonna be a lottery pick. He's a lot to prove on Wednesday in an SC tournament. Just want to make that note. And lastly, sorry, before I give you guys a quick score prediction, Hop Jalen Carey was the guy for Vanderbilt who stood out. He had 18 and 14. He tied his season high with 18. He's actually scored 18 at Tennessee, a low in-state rivalry, so maybe shows up for the big games. But it was his season high in rebounds of 14. Nine of those 14 rebounds came on the offensive end. That's what needs to change for Texas. And Kane Shedrick, as you said, Hop, got better as this game went on. 16 and 10, big performance. I don't know if him, Arthur Kluma, Big Z, Kent, whoever you name it, and company is going to let Jalen Carey get 9 offensive rebounds.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
think that's not happening. I don't see Jason Edwards having too good of a game if Kendall Weaver is healthy on Wednesday. I'm gonna go with Texas here, low scoring, Texas 71, Vanderbilt 67. Um, I guess I think we'd get a little bit ahead of ourselves to predict this A&M game, but anything else you guys have of note in this SEC tournament or for
Yeah.
Texas game against
Quick
Vanderbilt?
shout out. Trey Johnson won SEC Freshman of the Year, so that's a tremendous honor. And in this conference, which is probably the best basketball conference we've seen in the last 20, 25 years, to win Freshman of the Year, to be the scoring leader, it's certainly a huge accomplishment for Trey Johnson. And that is something to be proud of. And I'm sure we'll see him hopefully go on to a long, fortuitous NBA career.
Well, and just slightly piggybacking on what you said, not only the SEC award, but you hinted at it. He led all Division One freshmen in scoring this year, about 21 a game. Very impressive. Sure, there was nights like Friday night and Saturday night where he was chucking, though none were that bad. But I thought in general his shot selection improved as the year went on, and he knew what spots he needed to get to, and he knew what he needed to do to many times try to shoot this team back into games.
Yeah, and it was clear also, Hop, his shot selection got better. Specifically, it's clear that he favors his right hand a little bit. It's clear he was easily able to get to the right side of the court on layups, floaters, pull-up jumpers, could go on, but clear that Trey Johnson was better at not only shot selection, but picking his shots, especially in crunch time. Shout out Trey Johnson, freshman player of the week in the SEC, as Seth said. Shout out PJ Tucker. He signed a 10-day with the New York Knicks. He's played all year. He's going to make his debut tonight for the Knicks against the Kings. Last thing, Seth, you brought this up recently. According to Joe Lunardi, bracketology, Texas is one of the first four teams out. One of those first four, two of those first four teams in are teams that Texas has lost to, Oklahoma and Ohio State. I was looking at Ohio State's big outlook in their postseason tournament, Big Ten tournament. They play Iowa, a team they've yet to face, and if they win, they play Wisconsin. I believe they lost to Wisconsin.
They play Illinois if they win.
Positive.
Mhm. 10-15. Iowa, 10 versus 15
They
win.
they do play they do play Illinois. Excuse me.
Lost
Um,
to, so probably
sorry.
still beat Iowa, but they probably Illinois is hot right now, so probably would be surprised if Ohio State wins more than one. And the Iowa win doesn't really move the needle too much. Iowa's not a good team, so
Correct. And they actually have beaten Iowa and they blew them out earlier in the season. But just saying, Illinois is definitely a lot tougher than Wisconsin. And they play them in their second round matchup. So Texas is going to need to at least make it farther than Ohio State, I would say, in the SEC tournament than Ohio State does in the Big Ten. And they're definitely going to need to have a better showing than Oklahoma, considering Oklahoma won the more recent game in out of two matchups. So we'll see. Anything else to close out the show?
You want to
Well,
predict A&M hypothetical if it happens?
I think we have to, yeah.
Is the season ending at A&M?
We even go beyond A&M too to Tennessee, or we just go. Do we
Well,
have
it depends what we all say, I guess. But I think ultimately, also for reference, I just looked at the bracket. This should be about a 2 to 3 o'clock or so Central Time tip on Thursday. I guess whether Texas makes it or not, somebody will be playing A&M on Thursday. Hopefully, it is Texas. Um, and I think come about 5 Central on Thursday, the Rodney Terry era will be finished in Austin. He'll probably get the plane ride home, but I don't think, or actually no, they'll give him till Selection Sunday just to see how everything shakes out. But I think they lose to A&M. A&M, they're playing for tournament seeding at this point, but like usually guys play hard in their conference tournaments, especially when you're a 5 seed looking to do some damage. When does a Buzz Williams team not play hard? Um, I will say that A&M, I'll say actually Texas gets out to a lead due to shooting, and then A&M gradually with defense and rebounding works their way back into it. Look for a big game from Zurich Phelps. I'm going to say the Aggies win 78-73 and all but end Texas's season in the second round of the SEC tournament.
I know I had Vandy beating Texas, but certainly a pretty near a coin flip game. So if they're able to get that done and play A&M, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if they get out to a little hot start. But I think the Aggies would love nothing more than to keep their biggest rival out of the tournament and move on in the SEC tournament because they're a team right now that's probably about a 4 seed right now. A win, I think that obviously you want to win the SEC tournament, but getting up to the 3 line would be huge to escape the powerful 1 seeds that we have this year for as long as possible would be massive for A&M, especially because they've uh, had some struggles as of late outside of that Auburn win. But Auburn also, not to get too deep in the weeds, they had already clinched the SEC, so an easy letdown spot. But nonetheless, A&M obviously going to be up for that Texas game, and Texas going to be playing for their lives. But I do think they get out to if this game happens, they get out to a hot start. But I think ultimately A&M's defense just kind of extinguishes the Longhorns offense, and the Aggies wins 77-66.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah, according to Lenardi, A&M's projected to be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. So yes, they do have a little to play in terms of making it in. That being said, I think A&M remembers what happened in their last matchup against Texas, that Trayvon Mark buzzer beater layup off the glass, and more importantly, are they probably remember Ronnie Terry's celebration at the end of that game. And A&M did end up giving up a 20-point lead in that one. So if they play Texas again, I think it's safe to say that they'll be more than ready Thursday afternoon. I'm with you, Seth. I think this one's not even close. I'm going A&M 73, Texas 57.
Do we even bother with a Tennessee prediction? Because that would be the matchup. They do have the double bye. Do we throw it out there?
I think we could just, quick unanimous consent. Who's got an if they make it that far? I do.
You know what? If they get to Tennessee, they played Tennessee tough in Austin. Obviously, there will be a lot of Tennessee fans in Nashville, but if they already beat Vanderbilt and A&M, they might be feeling themselves, and who knows? This is why you do it, right? Conference tournaments this time of year is the best. Like, there's a reason why we throw that thing up because if we just looked at the paper, it would be 1 seeds in the Final Four. There's a reason why you have Florida Atlantic make the Final Four, or VCU or Loyola, Chicago, like these teams making the Final Four, or these 10 seeds winning their conference tournaments. This is why we love March, right? Anything can happen, and we're just guessing using our best knowledge and the analysis and statistics that we have, right? But so you never know. But I'm gonna say no.
Well, and you never do know, you got the Naval Academy tonight, losing record in the final of the Patriot League against Washington, D.C.'s own American University. And then it sent shockwaves to the DMV with that game. And then out west, the Pepperdine, are they the Blue Waves or just the Waves? Pepperdine
Beat
below
Oregon State.
500. Huh?
They beat Oregon State.
Oh,
No,
and
and
a big one from the CAA, not to cut you off. The 12 seed Delaware beats the 1 seed Towson by 10.
wow. Wow.
Out for the Blue Hens.
Was that the final?
Yeah, 82-72.
Also, the Blue Hens are dancing. Wow. I mean,
Oh, no, sorry, that was not the final. It was a semifinal.
and then Pepperdine, they have to slay another dragon tonight. They're up against St. Mary's of Moraga, California. You guys know St. Mary's. They always have like some great player from like another country, plus like a bunch of Americans who can shoot. Um, we'll see what happens there. But like the point stands. March, anything can happen. I remember a distinctly mediocre Georgetown team, the one success of the Patrick Ewing era, making a run through Madison Square Garden and winning the Big East. And then quickly on VCU, Horns fans, you better be rooting for the Rams. You're going to want them or George Mason, as you said, Seth, to make sure that a bid does not get stolen out of the A10. Because as I recall, they would each probably have cases at large bids. So you want no?
George Mason's not even they're pretty, the most part, left off here. So you really,
Oh, so VCU. Go
you
Rams.
want VCU.
Yeah.
You need the Shaka Smart Express here to win. You need Texas to win. You need Marquette to win. You need VCU to win.
Yeah.
So, right, Shaka.
That's wow.
And by the way, Pepperdine, they lost their best player from last year, Houston Millette. He warms the bench at Alabama this year. And Texas needs St. Mary's
Yes.
to win that West Coast tournament because any sort of upset in conference tournament for Texas does not fend well for their March Madness chances.
Zaga could,
Unless it's themselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
You could
Correct.
take Gonzaga. Gonzaga would be fine. They're in the field in every bracket. So
Yeah.
that's you don't want a San Francisco or a Pepperdine winning that tournament. Absolutely not.
Correct. And actually, though, I do like Texas's chances against Tennessee. It looked really good against them at the Moody Center in early January. So
Bill is just drinking the
you never
Kool-Aid.
know. And
Drinking the orange Kool-Aid.
Wait, by the way, who knows? Texas, Tennessee, Friday night. Maybe Texas fans are like, hey, remote work Friday, fly out to Nashville Friday. Who doesn't want weekend night in Nashville on a Friday night? No complaints. Like the
You,
chances, maybe you stay till Saturday.
you also a little more Kool-Aid drinking this time from a computer that physically can't drink Kool-Aid, the ESPN analytics, 62.1% chance, says the analytics, that the Longhorns will beat Vanderbilt. Not sure about that, but I guess with that number being high, it makes sense why bracketologist Joe Lenardi still has the Horns at a 30% chance to make the field, which I think all three of us would give them a lower shot than that, I would think.
Yeah, I'd put it at like a 10 to 15 number there, 10 to 15%. Just because even if you get the win over Vanderbilt, and then even if you beat A&M, there's still not a guarantee that it's not a lock that Texas would win. Now, if they won three, I don't think anybody's gonna dispute with wins over A&M and Tennessee. I don't think anybody's gonna leave them out, but um, it's tough. It's tough. You're playing in the best conference in the country, and you got to win two, maybe three games back to back to back days. So we'll see.
And it may just depend on if the committee gets cold feet about, oh my God, what do we do if we put 13 teams in the same conference in? And I think all three of our responses to that would be put any team, maybe even South Carolina or LSU, up against a team like Xavier on a neutral floor and see how that goes. I think that would be our response to that.
And a couple more bid stealers we don't want to see happen here. If you're Texas, you need UC San Diego to win the Big West because UC Irvine is kind of creeping up the at-large board as well. And then North Carolina, pretty atrocious. 1-11 now in quad one games. They shouldn't be there, but the name brand will carry, and they've taken care of business against the rest for the most part, even though they really haven't beaten anybody with a pulse. And then Boise State is a team. I believe they're playing the winner of Nevada Fresno State in the first round of the Mountain West Conference. And obviously that's probably not a win that'll move the needle, but if they get to the semis and even the finals of the Mountain West, that's when it could hurt Texas. So a lot of games to be watching. Obviously, the most important is going to be Wednesday at 2:30 against Vanderbilt.
Yes, and a couple shout outs for Longhorn the pros. Unfortunately, Jackson Hayes, he's injured with a knee contusion. With Luka Doncic and Jackson Hayes in the lineup, the Lakers are 8-2. They lost to Boston on Saturday. No Jackson Hayes. Um, Kevin Durant moved into the top 10 and made free throws. He's now ninth in all-time makes from the free throw line. And Jared Allen is still screaming when he gets called for 3 seconds in the key. Key helps the Cavs as they have won 14 straight. And again, as I said, PJ Tucker, he just signed a 10-day contract with the New York Knicks and make his debut tonight, 9:30 Central against the Kings. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Will Iger here with Seth Berger and Ryan Hopper. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BurntOrangeSN and Ryan_Hopper31, Seth Berger02, and Will_Iger. And last but not least, please subscribe to this YouTube page below at Burnt Orange Sports Network. Hopefully, this isn't our last podcast of the year while Texas still remains in contention for a national championship. But if not, we'll be back in 2 weeks as next week's our spring break. Maybe we do a special edition spring break podcast. I'm open to it, but we have not discussed.
We got
Maybe not.
Pathology. Come on, we got to at least just give some
Uh,
sleepers.
I
Yeah,
am I am there.
maybe we'll have a hot
Um,
board too.
be interesting to see where the three of us do those podcasts from, but hey, why not? So thank you so much for tuning in, and please tune in to Texas's games in the SEC tournament starting against Vanderbilt in Nashville, 2:30 Central Time. Thank you guys again for joining us, and have a good one.